What are the 10 best movies of the year? I can't answer that, but I can tell you mine.
We don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
What's up, Fleek fans? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a crazy year. My house flooded, got to travel with a bunch of YouTubers, and we had a baby. Hectic. All that's great, but let's talk about movies. Here are my 10 favorite films of the year. It's a best list, but really, it's a favorites list. These are the 10 movies that impacted me most. If you missed my honorable mentions video, that's there. Movies like Poor Things, The Killer, and Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm sorry.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
I'm not sorry. This is a special list. It may be the hardest top 10 I've ever had to do. Do I say that every year? Yes. Is it true?
Maybe.
Number 10.
Coming in at number 10 is a movie that I didn't even get a chance to put an individual review for out on this channel. Part of me is glad that I didn't because it grew on me. Then I watched it again and I'm like, yeah, no, I love this one. It's Blackberry. This is a fascinating true story. In a year of true stories being told in just the coolest way, a couple of those have already made my lists, a couple of them you'll see, but Blackberry falls firmly into the category of compelling real-life drama, phenomenal performances, Glenn Howerton being the standout, an Oscar-worthy performance. He's probably not going to get a nomination. Austin's going to be pissed. How about Jay Baruchel? This is one of the most transformative performances I've seen from him. Honestly, I didn't know he had it in him, but this story is so compelling. Everyone's dad had a Blackberry. My dad, your dad, everybody's dad. So what happened to the company? How do they rise and fall so quick? We know it has a lot to do with Apple, but is there a story behind that that's even more interesting? I believe there is, especially after watching this film. And just the dramatic moments told in a very different way from movies like Tetris and Air that came out this year. Much more intense than I expected, and overall excellent direction from Matt Johnson. It's a film that grows on you as you think about it, and on second watch, it cemented the fact that it was going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year. Did not expect that. I wish I would have reviewed it, but I loved it.
Number 9.
From director Celine Song and A24, I expected this to be good because of the word of mouth from certain film festivals, but Past Lives took all of my expectations and threw them out the window. I didn't know what type of drama this would be, this spark from the romance that I felt immediately at the beginning, and two people that are in very different stages of their lives, they come back into each other's lives after all of these years, and you start to realize the regret that they feel, but also the emotions that are spawning from that. Am I boring you? I promise the movie is better than what you're anticipating. This is a real romantic drama that feels about as real as any romance that I've seen on screen. It makes me think of the Before trilogy as I'm watching, but it goes in a very different direction. And, you know, Nora played beautifully by Greta Lee. Oscar nomination, anyone, by the way, but she has a new guy in her life by the name of Arthur. And you see this character at the beginning and you think you know what he's going to be. He is not that. And this triangular relationship that is formed as we progress throughout this film, very simple, very subtle, not in your face, not hilarious. It's a romantic comedy. It's not that. It's a romantic drama. But the filmmaking, the score, and the emotional gut punch that you get at the end. And I don't know if everyone's going to respond to this. It all depends on where you are in your life and if you can somewhat relate to the feelings being put on screen in this film. I was able to. I thought it was beautiful, and it's one of the most compelling movies I've watched in years.
Number 8.
How about James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? From the first trailer, I said, oh, he's going for something here. It's going to be much more emotionally impactful than maybe I expected. I should have expected it because all of the Guardians movies have beautiful emotion, but they're funny and quirky and charming. This has all of that, everything we've seen from the other two movies, but I believe the story is a bit more intricate, and the villain here is the best villain we've seen from a Guardians movie. I mean, my goodness.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
In the heat of controversy, he don't miss.
The High Evolutionary is somebody I'd like to see again, to be honest with you. And anyone who takes animals and does what he does in this movie, you hate him. You hate him for good reason, but you love our team. And the focal points in Rocket Raccoon and some of the great performances given, one in particular, Chris Pratt, who's been in some of the biggest movies of the year. This is maybe his best blockbuster performance. One scene in particular, yeah, That got me, man. I can't believe a bunch of creepy-looking CGI creatures made me this emotional. Also, the soundtrack, you have to talk about that with every Guardians movie. And just the experience that I had in the theater. This is one I've watched a few times this year. It's great every time. Somebody, please.
Get this man a gun.
Number 7.
How are you going to top this? It's impossible. It makes no sense why this movie was as good as it was. Actually, yeah, it kind of does. The first 3 are super entertaining. I believe the first John Wick is like a pinnacle of action filmmaking and world building in a super subtle but interesting way. They continue to build on that until John Wick Chapter 4, when all hell breaks loose and he goes crazy and kills more people in this film than he's ever killed before. Chapter 4 is really long, so I don't know if this is true, but there are probably less words said by our protagonist in this movie than like any movie that I've watched in a long time. But Keanu Reeves knows what he has to do in this role. He is physical, and that physicality makes him a good actor. I don't care what you say about his dialogue and his script reading and blah, 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 blah. No, it's all about the physicality in this role, and he captures that, and he masters it. Some amazing additions to this world. Bill Skarsgård, Donnie Yen, some of the most compelling performances of the year, and it's an action movie that focuses on the action. The scene with the dragon's breath and the camera.
That's why he's the GOAT!
Number 6.
Good things usually happen. Mostly happen when Ben Affleck's in the director's chair, but he's also in front of the camera here, as well as Matt Damon and Viola Davis and Chris Tucker and Jason Bateman. It's a story revolving around Michael Jordan, but also revolving around Nike and how they, as a company, rose through the ranks thanks to this one shoe that defined an era of kids, an era of sports, and really an era for Nike to become the company that they are in that world. It is a compelling true story, but unlike something like Blackberry, this is told in a way that highlights a script, dialogue that leans into comedic sensibilities, and it works well with the cast. Bateman and Tucker, they're always good in those roles. But man, Matt Damon in this film, nobody's talking about Matt Damon. He deserves to be talked about. Viola Davis deserves to be talked about. Everyone is giving it their all in this movie to tell a true story that, yes, leans into some of the elements that, the speech that Matt Damon gives at the end, it may be my favorite part of the film, but it's also kind of like, yeah, I don't know if that actually happened like that, but it's a movie. It's supposed to entertain and stay as true as it possibly can. I love that it leaned into that and had this snappy, witty dialogue that kept you not only on the edge of your seat waiting to see how this was going to happen because you know what happens, but also it kept you invested in these characters, and the decision not to show Michael Jordan in certain ways, but then give you that highlight that they give you at the end. Yeah, it's a dad movie, the ultimate dad movie. Not everyone's going to love it because of that, but hey, I'm a dad now.
Just call me daddy.
I deserve this. This is the movie I deserve. And plus, I'm a basketball guy. I was enthralled. I loved it. Pain, devastation, sadness.
Number 5.
All of those things could describe The Iron Claw, directed by Sean Durkin, starring a phenomenal cast of individuals who play these 4 brothers, and that's some of the best chemistry I've seen on screen all year, highlighted by Zac Efron's Oscar-worthy performance, at least worthy of a nomination. What are we doing? Hey, listen, I tried. With the Critics' Choice Awards, I put him in there because he deserves it, and it is just devastating on a level that I haven't seen in years. The story based on a true story, if you know anything about it, you know what this movie is going to be inevitably. Honestly, Sean Durkin and A24, they could have messed this up big time. I don't know how you straddle the fence and make this movie and not go overboard with the devastation, but also keep it light enough and showcase this masculinity in a way that's going to appeal to so many people, but on the other side of things, make it heartbreaking and devastating and emotional and beautiful all at the same time. I have no clue how they did it. The Iron Claw is genuinely spectacular. Wrestling fans who are aware of the true story, I believe they're going to get so much out of it. But those who aren't aware and did not know, and even those who did know, they didn't know the details that are showcased in this film. And we talked about Efron. Harris Dickinson is awesome. Jeremy Allen White. Holt McElhaney, who has to do a lot here. He does it. He delivers, man. The Iron Claw is in theaters right now. Please do me a favor. Go see this film. It's worth your money.
Number 4.
Don't sit there and tell me we didn't get good blockbusters this year. We've already talked about a couple in this video, but hey, let's talk about maybe a contender for the best blockbuster. It's not just a contender for the best Godzilla movie. It is the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. It's Godzilla -1. Yeah, we get the monster goodness and the great visual effects. They're Oscar worthy. I think it could get a nomination for visual effects. Also, this movie is Oscar worthy. I think this is one of the definitive best blockbusters we have seen in years, but not because of the monster stuff, which is amazing. The atomic breath scene is one of the coolest experiences I've had in a theater in years. It's the human drama, the element I normally hate in these films. And just like, give me more monsters. In this movie, because I was so invested in the characters, I'm like, give me more humans. I've never said that. And this guy who doesn't fulfill the duties that he's supposed to fulfill ends up changing lives in a way that is so beautiful. Starts this very unconventional family that, one would think it would mean more to him as he goes, but he has demons that he's fighting throughout, and the people that are surrounding him so positive and influential, well, for the most part, not at the beginning. But when he first lands on that island, I'm like, this is not a standard, typical Godzilla movie. This is something unlike anything that I have ever seen. And our creator creating this film on such a low budget and bringing us this visual spectacle, but also this emotional drama with an ending that's very familiar to Top Gun Maverick and Star Wars. I get it. Maybe that's why I loved it, but I think I loved it because of the script, and I never thought I'd say that about a Godzilla movie. This is magical.
It was perfect.
Number 3.
Hey, let's talk about the best Spider-Man movie. Let's do it. You ready? There's an argument to be made here that Into the Spider-Verse is better than Across the Spider-Verse. It's neck and neck for me. But Across the Spider-Verse is a magical combination of a great individual story, a great side story that even becomes the focus at a point in Gwen Stacy's character, but also this huge visual spectacle and an audible spectacle that combines all of the Spider-Man that we know and love, multiple universes that we know and now love, and characters from the comics that are going to make comic book fans happy, general audiences happy, critics happy, and people who love animation lose their minds because it's the best looking animated movie maybe that I've ever seen. It's that good. Everything about it is that good. The only huge criticism I'm like, okay, I get it, is that it is a definitive part 1. We've seen a couple of those this year, mostly handled very well. But my God, I mean, you can't help but to love the build-up into part 2 and how spectacular this was as a standalone story, a journey for Miles, but also a journey for Gwen Stacy, and bringing in Spider-Man 29 and some of these villainous characters and exploring all of these universes, having those nods for comic book fans. It has everything you want in a comic book movie. Don't tell me comic book movies are dead. I mean, yeah, there have been a lot that suck this year, but a few movies on this list that I've talked about, I believe we're just getting started. But how do you top this? I don't know.
Number 2.
I had to make a decision. This is the hardest 1 and 2 and 1, crime and punishment.
Punishment and crime.
I couldn't decide. I had to rewatch both movies in the last 3 days to make a decision. I still couldn't do it, so I flipped a coin, and the coin landed right on its edge.
Look at it!
My number 2 is The Holdovers. My number 2 is a film that I love. It may just be my favorite Christmas movie. I've seen it 3 times, and I love it each and every time more than the last. And I believe this is one of my favorite characters. Him specifically. One of my favorite characters in a movie of all time. Paul Giamatti gives an Oscar-worthy performance. Divine Joy Randolph is going to win the Oscar. There's my prediction. Dominic Sessa should be nominated in his first ever performance. How do you do that in your first ever performance? It is rare to get a movie that makes you feel the way that I feel while watching. And yes, it's happy and go lucky at points, and it's comedic in a beautiful way. It's quirky. I think one of my favorite scenes of the year is when he jumps off of that thing in the gym and messes up his shoulder, and just the facial expressions, the back and forth in the car. It's just some of the most memorable and wonderful dialogue I've seen in forever. Payne, the way that he constructs this film, so focused and honed in on the emotion from the characters in the script, but also delivering on characters that you want to stay with and remain with. I mean, I could have watched a sequel that didn't even really have a spectacular plot to it of these characters just going about their everyday lives. That's when you know. I mentioned it in my review. It's kind of like how a John Hughes movie hits you in a certain way. Really how Pain movies have hit me in the past, but never on this level. And to stand out as an amazing Christmas movie, an amazing relationship story, an emotional look at grief, how life affects us all in different ways, but at the same time, similar ways, the attributes that our main two characters share. You don't expect that at the beginning, but they slowly start to figure it out. And when they begin to bond in a way that I think they've never really bonded with anyone else before, that's when the story became what it became. And I was swept away by The Holdovers. It made me feel so different than I felt watching a movie in a theater in quite some time, but also upon rewatch, getting into really the psyche of what these characters mean and looking at these performances. And I highlighted the other two, but Paul Giamatti, oh my goodness, he's so good, man. Any other year, this would be number one, but it's not any other year.
Number 1.
His name is J. Robert Oppenheimer. Well, it's Christopher Nolan. That's kind of the MVP of this movie. But it's also everyone in this film, and I mean one of the most stacked casts I've ever seen across the board, giving it 100% because they know the type of director that Nolan is, and that is a world-class director giving his master class in filmmaking. This is his magnum opus. It's not necessarily my favorite Nolan film, but it's in the conversation now. He has given us greatness across the board, but I believe the combination is the best combination we've ever seen from him. Dialogue, which is usually the biggest complaint, the screenplay, the best it's ever been in a Nolan film, on a technical level, across the board, cinematography, color grading, soundtrack, score, Ludwig Göransson's masterpiece, Christopher Nolan's masterpiece. I didn't use that word in my first review. I feel like I have to see a movie 2 or 3 times that I love to even start to consider it a masterpiece. I've seen this one 4 times. And it's 3 hours long. Who cares? To weave together a story like this and to make it this compelling is frankly ridiculous. I think another director could have taken this exact book and this exact source material, a true story, and delivered the most boring movie you've ever seen. Think about it. This could have been so boring. Some people probably think it still is boring, but it's way more entertaining than it could have been. It could have been a disaster. It's not that. It's upbeat. It's compelling in a magnificent way. The way they weave these storylines and these visuals and the storytelling in the black and white mixed with color and all of this building up to the bomb sequence that delivers, especially in a 70mm theater. But it also delivers watching it at home, man. I watched this with my dad last night, and he was like on the edge.
I'm a donkey on the edge!
I want to make a video talking about my favorite scenes of the year, but I'm going to tell you right now there's going to be like 3 from Oppenheimer because just these sequences are magnificent and stunning, and I could talk about this. I could be here all day. But Oppenheimer, it's an astonishing piece of work. I can't stop thinking about it. My top 2 or my top 10. Keep in mind, there were some very mid but also terrible films this year. We're going to talk about those a little bit later on, but right now, I want to ask the question, what's your top 10? What's a movie that you thought would make my top 10, yet it didn't? Is there a film that I missed? You can check my Letterboxd right now and tell what movies I've seen, what movies I haven't. So what do I need to check out? And are you excited for more lists? The best Netflix series of the year, the worst movies of the year. The only way you'll know is if you turn that notification bell on. If you don't, it's absolutely fine. Drop a like if you haven't so far. Thanks so much for watching. It's been an amazing year. You all are genuinely the absolute best. I'll see you soon.